So Kal Kadosh Bokato, we're going to continue with Daf Kuf Dalid Amud Aleph 124a1. Okay, so we were speaking about yesterday a very important concept, which was we're talking about muktzeh. So we spoke about maklot, which are basically the sticks which they used to come and skin the animals on. So it says maklot dakin v'chalakin ayusham umanichal ketvo v'ketav chaveros. They used to put it on their shoulder and their friend's shoulder in front. And that's how they used to put the Korban Pesach, and then they used to skin it. So Rabbi Lazar says, if it comes out on Shabbat, meniach, right, from the top, right, and then they come and they skin the animal. Glustera, what is the glustera exactly? The Talmud, we learned the Masechet Kelim, neger, which is the briach which they put into the door. Okay, so this neger, sheyesh b'rosho glustra, that has a glustra at the top, which means that it's like round, right? It's got a round part on the top. Rabbi Yoshua says, shomta min petach zeh v'tola b'chavero b'shabbat. You're allowed to take it off from one door and put it into another door. Rabbi Tarfon says, you could actually come, it's like a utensil, and you could carry it anywhere where you want in the same chatzer, in the same courtyard. Medocha was what we just said before, right? That you're allowed to carry the medocha, which is the mortar, because of the garlic with it. Okay, Amar Rabba comes and he says, right, as follows. He says, Mimai, right, how do you know this halakha? This was done before Hatarat Kelim. Really, I'm going to tell you, this is after they already permitted the different utensils. Okay, but kanim tamamai, what's the reasoning why kanim are like this? Mishumi apusha, because it's going to make the breads bad. Remember, we're talking about the breads on the shulchan, on lechem panim, on the shulchan. Okay? So it says, so since it's such a short time, it's not going to become bad and rotten because of that. So it says the Gemara, maklot efshakimo Rabbi Elazar. Maklot is maybe it's going to be like Rabbi Elazar, right? Lustra, right? Rabbi Yanai, we're talking about the chassid that does not have an eruv done, an eruv there, right? Rabbi Yoshua Sover tocha petach kilifnim dami, but he says that within the house is already considered inside. And you're allowed to come and you're allowed to be metaltel, a utensil of the batim inside of the chatzer, and that's why he said you're not allowed to. The phone says no, that the entrance is considered on the outside, and therefore, right, it's the chatzer. The chatzer come metaltel. Medocha he was like Nehemiah. The Nehemiah is the one that holds that any utensil could only be taken for the metaltel for that specific usage. Okay, fine. We're starting the Mishnah. So the Mishnah says, Kukav Dalad Munalef Mishnah, Kol HaKelim Nitalim Letzorech V'Shelo Letzorech. All the utensils you could take it for tzorech or for shelo letzorech. And Nehemiah says, Any talin ele letzorech. It's only going to be taken letzorech. Okay? That means only for the necessity. So now comes the Gemara and says as follows. My letzorech umay shelo letzorech. What does it mean exactly letzorech and not letzorech? What does that mean? Okay? So he says like this. He says, right? Amar Rabba. Rabba comes and he says, 1 second. No, because of the light. Okay, so Amar Rabba comes and he says, Letzorech is the version of leheter letzorech gufo. If you need the actual body, but it's a kli shel leheter, something leheter, and you need to use it for something, shelo letzorech, not for any reason, is the version of leheter for mekomo, for its place, but not to actually use the utensil. So the version of isur, letzorech gufo in. No, so it's only tzorech gufo, yes, not tzorech mekomo. And then Nehemiah comes and he says, only the tzorech gufo, yes, but not the tzorech mekomo, no. So Amale Rabba comes and he wants to push off this explanation of Rabba, and he says as follows. And he says the tzorech mekomo, when we are talking about the tzorech mekomo, right? Shelo letzorech karitle. Are you going to tell me that it's considered lo letzorech? He says, how do you do that exactly? Elamarava, but rather Rava says that tzorech is the Vashon Nachlo Le'eter. Ben Le'tzorech Gufo B'Tzorech Mekomo, they would prefer it's Le'tzorech Gufo Mekomo. Shelo Le'tzorech is even Mechama Letzel, even if you're going to save the utensil, for example, from the sun to the shade. The Vashon Nachlo Le'isur, Tzorech Gufo B'Tzorech Mekomo is also permitted. Mechama Letzel is going to be prohibited. And Rabbi Nechemia comes and says, even the Vashon Nachlo Le'eter, Tzorech Gufo Mekomo, yes, but not Mechama Letzel. Okay, so that's his opinion of how does it work. Okay, so says the Gemara as follows: Yativ Rav Safra. So Rav Safra is coming and he's sitting down, and Ravacha Rav Huna Rav Chanina. Yativ coming and they were saying, according to Rabba, Aliba de Nechemia, according to the Nechemia, Hani Kearot, plates. How are you going to carry a plate? Imagine you just finished eating. So now, if you finish eating, what are you going to do now? You can't carry the plate because you're not using the plate anymore, and it's not for the space. So what are you going to do? How are you going to carry it? So Amalur of Safra, it's considered like a graf sharei, which means just like you have something of excrement, which is called a graf sharei, right? So therefore, in such a case, it's like a graf sharei. So, right, which is like a thing of excrement, which is disgusting, you're allowed to take it out. So the same thing, dirty plates that are on the table, you're allowed to take it out because of a graf sharei. So Amar Abai Rabba comes Abai and he says to Rabba, Lemor aliva de Reb Nechemia. According to, right, the shita of you in that Reb Nechemia. Hani karot, how are you going to carry it? According to Reb Nechemia. Amalei Rav Safra Chavrin Tirgima, the exact same name. Graf Sharei. So I mean, the same question that you asked on Rabba, you're going to ask on Nechemia, he's going to answer the same question. Okay? So now he comes and he says, as follows. He comes and he says as follows. Okay? Eitvei Abai Rava comes Abai and he asks from Rava, Medocha. When we're talking about this to crush the garlics and everything. So it says in Yesh Bashum, if it has garlic, you're allowed to carry it. If not, you're not allowed to carry it. So obviously, according to Rabba, that he's talking about that it's going to be a sur, even letzorach mekomo. For 1 second. If it's going to be mutar letaltel klishval to sur, even for mekomo, then how does he explain this? And he, right? So he says, you're right. Here we're talking about that you're moving it only mechama letzel, and that's what's going to be prohibited. Mechama letzel means from the sun to the shade. Okay, so eighthly, another question. Vishavin, we said that they were equal in the faction kitzev of basar, that if you're going to cut on top of it, right, meat, so you're not allowed to come and you're not allowed to move it afterwards. So what are we talking about? According to him, why? Why is it going to be a sur? So it says the same thing mechama letzel. That means anytime it's mechama letzel, it's going to be prohibited. The hadith, and that which we learned in the Mishnah and Beitzah, and you're not allowed to put a pot, whether it's on a piece of wood or by the door. He says, 1 second, bikat, a piece of wood, is a klishma leter on Yom Tov. Because you're allowed to add it to the fire on Yom Tov. So if it's going to be a klishma leter, why is it going to be a sur? Almas, you see from here, the vashim leter, whether it's going to be a sur. So the Gemara, no. Hata mainu ta, my time, what's the reasoning? Kevin de Shabbat, since on Shabbat, sur, so it's a gezerah Yom Tov to Shabbat. So we make a gezerah Yom Tov because of Shabbat. Yechitem, and if you're going to tell me Shabbat Gufei, you should permit it. Because it's Vashal Toli Yisur, Tzor Guvot Tzor Mekomo is permitted. Hanamile Echadi Ika Torakli, that's only if it's a utensil. Here, Acha Deleka Torakli Allah, but here it's not a utensil, so it's going to be a sur. So it says the Gemara, Umiga Zrinan, can you actually make such a decree? Are you going to make a decree on Yom Tov because of Shabbat? But now we learned in the Mishnah Beitzah, you're allowed to put down the fruits through the window on Shabbat, right? Yom Tov, but not on Shabbat. That means only on Yom Tov, but not on Shabbat. So we don't make a gezerah, we don't make these decrees. So says the Gemara, yeah, but why are you only going one way? Go the other way. Do we not make a decree? Says the Mishnah Beitzah, Em ben Yom Tov, Vatran, Em ben Yom Tov the Shabbat. There's no difference between Yom Tov and Shabbat. Only things of cooking, of food. Other than that, all is the same. So you see from here, we do make decrees. So Amar Rav Yosef says, Yosef, it's not a question. It's not a question. Hara Eliezer v'Hara Rabbi Yoshua. One of them is Rabbi Eliezer, that in one time we do make a chumrah, we are going to be a ser Tichan Yom Tov even to stop from Ersed. And one of them is Rabbi Yeshua that he argues on Rabbi Eliezer, and he says, right, that it's mutar tircha in order to save yourself from money. The time was learned in a Braita. Otov beno. Again, we're talking about the mother and the child of the animal. Shenaflu lebor, right, that it falls into a pit on Yom Tov. Rabbi Eliezer says, Maleta yishom al shofto. You bring up the first one in order to slaughter it, the shofto. And the second one, you just leave it there and you give it food in its place. The shushi amut in order that it's not going to die. Yeshua argues and he says, no, Maleta yishom al shofto. You bring up the first one in order to slaughter it, but you don't slaughter it. And then you do harama, you do a trick. You bring up the second one, and then whichever one you want, you slaughter. Okay, so you see from here, this is the shita of Rabbi Yeshua that even though there's tircha, there's work bringing up the second animal, you're allowed to do that in order to save yourself from law. So according to this, we just answered up the two Mishnayot. A Mishnah which is permitting you to bring the fruits through the roof with someone that if not, it's going to lose money. It's Rabbi Yeshua, and therefore it's permitted. But according to Rabbi Eliezer, it's going to be prohibited. So says the Gemara Mimai. How do you know that that's how to make the two cases put together? Maybe until there, Rabbi Eliezer didn't speak over there. You can leave it there, leave the animal inside there, and then what do? You give it food. But if you cannot give it the money, the food there, lo, I would say no. Inami, or if you want, you could say until there, Rishon didn't say there. Only if it's going to be that it's talking about Ba'arama. But here, which you could do a trick like this. But here, that you cannot do any type of a trick. So then he doesn't permit it like that. Papa, brother, Papa says, you're right. Lakashya. One is Shammai and one is Hillel. Why? The Tzram, as we learned in the Mishnah, Bet Shammai Omrim, Bet Shammai says, Kukav Daled Amud Bet, En Motzin et HaKatav et HaLulav et Sever Torah L'Shut Rabim. Right? This is in the first perek of Beitza over there. In the Mishnayot, it says that you're not allowed to take out a child, right, to do a Brit Milah, or a Lulav, right, for the Lulav, or the Sefer Torah in the Reshut Rabim and Yom Tov. Why? Because it's not Ochel Nefesh. But Bet Hillel, they permit it. Because according to Bet Hillel, since it was Hutra, right, that's what it says over here, since it was permitted, right, Ochel Nefesh, so too it was Hutra, other things as well. So there's a machlok between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel. It says the Gemara, you can't say that. It says why? Eimar de Shamat lehu lebet Shammai. When are we dealing with in Shita Bet Shammai only by Hotza'ah? But by Tiltul, Mishamal, we were talking about by Tiltul. Right? And here we're talking about Tiltul. So it says the Gemara, Tiltul Gufela Mishum Hotza'ah. He says, one second, I thought Tiltul is because of Hotza'ah. Tiltul means to carry things. Right? So the Tiltul is because of Hotza'ah, that you're taking something out to the public domain. So it says the Gemara, Tiltul Gufela Mishum Hotza'ah. So he says, Ve'af Rav Savala Lehad Rava. Even Rav holds of Rava. The Amar Rav, as Rav says, Mor Shelo Yiganev. We're talking about Yeramar, which is like a medar. It's like a shovel type of thing. So if you're going to move it in order that it shouldn't get stolen, that's called lo letzorech, because that's mechama letzel. That's like saving it from the sun to the shade, and it's going to be asur. Tama, what's the reasoning? Because you don't want it to get stolen. Aval it's going to be mekomo. So he says it's going to be mutar. Any is it so? He says the heart of Kahana iklive Rav. Rav Kahana visited the house of Rav. Right? And he said, "Aituli shuta, bring me a trap." In order, right, to sit on it. So he says, "Lav lameimra not about the version of the isur. The tzor gufo, yes, tzor mekomo, no." So it says the Gemara, this is what he said. Shekulu shuta mikame kana. No, take the trap in front of Kana. Right, which means it was right in front of him, so take it away from him. Right? Why? Because of the tzor mekomo. You could answer there it was mechama letzel. But if we would have left it there, it would have gotten ruined. So Rav Mari Barachel, right? So Mari Barachel, he had different types of comforters or a mizron, which is like actual the mattress, right, in the sun, and it was going to get ruined. So he came in front of Rava, he told him, Shari, he says it's permitted. Itli acharina says, what? But I have other ones. Meaning, I'm not going to use it. I have other ones. So chazu leorchin, he says, yeah, but 1 second. He says it's fitting for guests. Itli nami says, what? I have also for the guests. Right? Amale, so he told them, kalita lecha. He says, what? You hold like Rabba? That you're saying the klishim latul le'eter is going to be asur mechama letzel. The chule al mashari. So for everybody it would be permitted, for you it's asur. Because if you hold like Rabba, for you it's asur. Everybody else is going to be permitted. Okay? Amar Rabbi Abba, Amar Rabbi Rashi Rav says Rabbi Neiman Rabbi Rashi Rav. Machpedot shel milta. Right? We're talking about brooms, right? Of milta, which is made out of bud, different fabrics. You're allowed to carry it on Shabbat. Aval shel tmara of a dekel of a palm tree, it's going to be asur. Rabbi Lazar says even of a dekel is going to be permitted. My skin, what are we dealing with? If you're going to tell me so then behale merav shel tmara, that's why you said of a date tree, it's going to be no. He holds like Rabba, which means that should be permitted. Ela barada, right? Mechamal letzel, it's mechamal letzel. Behale Rabbi Lazar afshel tmara. With this, we're going to say that even of a tmara. So it says Lola mechamal letzel. We were talking about mechamal letzel. Be'ima v'chera Rabbi Lazar. You have to say also Rabbi Lazar said the same thing. Fine. Kol hakelim nitalim b'Shabbat, shivrehem nitalim b'mahem. All the utensils which can be carried on Shabbat, their broken pieces can be carried with them. So it says the Mishnah, as long as they are going to be doing the same original status quo of a melacha. Shivrei areva, which is basically when you have this dish that's basically right that one of the chasoba empia chavit that you could cover also a chavit, a barrel. Shivrei zechuchit, broken pieces of glass, you could use it in order to cover a pia pach, which is like a jug. Yudah says it has to be the same melacha that they originally used to do. Something similar, me'en melachta. Okay, v'shivra reva letzuk letocha mikpah. So when you have this shivra reva, so it was enough, right? It was a big receptacle in order to knead bread. So you need something big, like a big type of a bowl. So this shivra reva, you could pour something inside of it. Which means the original Tanakama said that as long as you could do something with it, it's not batel. According to this Shita of Rabbi Yehuda, you have to do the same original melacha, but something similar. It's not going to be the exact same thing. So, for example, this big receptacle or bowl that you used to use to knead, you still have to be able to put inside of it a type of like a food which is thick. It's not going to be a liquid, because it's not going to fall out, but something thick. But it can't just be stam, I'm going to use it now to cover something else, because it's not the same thing. Fine. Says the Gemara. Amar of Yudam Shmuel. Says the Yudam name of Shmuel. Machloket is if it was broken on Erev Shabbat. The more savar mem lachtam is more savar that it has to be with like the original melacha. In mem lacha lo, if it's another mem lacha no. More savar afilu mem lacha even if it's going to be another melacha, it's going to be okay. But if it broke on Shabbat, according to everybody, mutarim, it should be permitted. Why? Since it started off on the onset of Shabbat permitted, so that's going to be permitted. Meaning if it broke on Shabbat, it should be permitted. Okay, so motiv Rav Zutrai masikim bekelim, they masikim b'shvei. So asks Rav Zutrai on this. He says, 1 second, it's written on Yom Tov. You could come and you could do a sek, right? And you're allowed to carry them with kelim, which are shlemim, but not with shivrei kelim, because it's asur. So you cannot come and put them and use them as firewood. So he says, when did it break? He says, if you're going to tell me that it broke on Erev Yom Tov, it's in Balmaninu, so then it's just some piece of wood. Ela lava, rather, it had to break on Yom Tov itself. The Ketanian we learned, masikin bekelim, you could only be masakin bekelim, but not b'shivrei kelim. So it says, you're right. Ela yitman hachitman. This is what it means to say. Amar of Yudam Shmuel says, Shmuel machloket is if they broke on Shabbat. The more savar muchanu, more savar noladu. Is it called muchan that it was already prepared, or do you call it that it is not muchan but rather nolad? Nolad means that it's a new creation, right? Aval, but if it broke on Erev Shabbat, it's according to everybody. Why? Because it was already prepared for the menacha from Mibod Yom, from Erev Shabbat. So Tani Chada, we learned in a Braita, masikim bekelim and masikim b'shivei kelim. You could use the kelim and not shivei kelim, not broken pieces but full pieces. Another one says, just like you do masikim bekelim, you could do a b'shivei kelim. And the third opinion said, em masikim not on kelim and on shivei kelim. So it says the Gemara, how do you do Rabbi Shimon, how do you Nechem? It all depends. The first one is Rabbi Yehuda, he's machmir and muktzeh, and therefore he holds it's nolad. So therefore you cannot do shivei kelim only in kelim. The second one is Rabbi Shimon, that he's mekel and nolad, and therefore you could also use even shivei kelim. The third one is Rabbi Nechemia, that a utensil can only be carried if it's going to be for that purpose. and therefore it's always going to be asur. Amar Rav Nachman says, Rav Nachman, these bricks which are left over from a building, you're allowed to come and carry it. Why? Because you can lie down on it. Sharginu, but once, if you put them properly, then for sure it's going to be prohibited, because that means that you wanted to use it in another building. So it's going to be prohibited. So Amar Rav Nachman and Shmuel says, Rav Nachman and Shmuel, cheres ketana mutal taltel b'chatzer. When you have a cheres ketana, which is basically a piece of earthenware, which is a small piece, you're allowed to be metaltel et zeh b'chatzer, in a chatzer. Aval b'karmelit, but when we're talking about a karmelit, lo, you're not allowed to. Rav Nachman Didiyamar, Rav Nachman himself said, even in a karmelit. Aval b'shut rabim, lo, but in shut rabim, no. Rav Amar Rava says, afilu b'shut rabim, even in shut rabim. He says, Raza Rava l'tameh, Rava goes according to his reasoning, the Rava have a ka'azil beristika. The Rava was going beristika, right? So it says the mechuza, in a certain place of mechuza. So there's a shut rabim in mechuza. Mechuza is a city. Okay? Itazasai masana mtina, and his shoes got dirty. Ata shame, so the servant came. Shakal chasve chamer, and he was taking it off with cheres, with earthenware. Ramu berabanan kala, so everyone started saying, what's going on here? Yeah, Amar lo mistaye de lo megemine. Not only did they not learn what's permitted, migbar nami megamre. Says what? Not only did they not learn, they want to teach other people. How many times does it happen? People are me'aratzot, they know nothing, but still they want to come and they want to start teaching other people. First, let themselves learn, and then they could start teaching other people. But what if they didn't learn? How are they going to start teaching other people? Ilu bechatzer havai. If it would have happened in a chatzer, nilo bechatzer chatzedimana. What, they could have taken this pottery and they could have covered the utensil. So to here chatzedimana, it's fitting for me. They could use it to clean off the shoes. So Amar Rav Yudah Shmuel, it says Yudah Shmuel, megufat chavit, when we're talking about the cover of a barrel, right, shenikateta, right, that broke. Okay, mutal tatel ota b'Shabbat. You're allowed to carry it on Shabbat. You also learned in the Zaita megufa shenikateta hi ushvareya, whether it's the megufa, the cover, or right, the broken pieces, mutal tatel b'Shabbat. The lo yisfod min hashever, and you're not supposed to use a shever, something which is broken. If you threw it in the garbage, it's going to be asur taltala. So Matki Papa comes and he asks, if a person is going to throw his jacket to the garbage, hachanami that is going to be asur to carry it? He says, for sure it's not batla mitorakli, it's not batel from a utensil. And Amar Papa, brother, Papa says, in Zarka Mibod Yom Nashpa Asura, you're right. But if you threw it on Erev Shabbat, now it's going to be Asur Tatel Shabbat. Why? Because that shows that you show that you never want to use it again, and therefore it's Batel from being a Turakli, and therefore it's a Mutze. Okay? And with that, we finish with the...
A pleasure.